This is straight up the scariest housing experiment in American history. This is actually a nightmare. And Jerome Powell just admitted something shocking about it. And that has led Trump officials to call for his resignation. Not because of inflation, not because of interest rates, but because of housing.
I'd love him to resign if he wanted to. He's done a lousy job.
Something that is completely out of Jerome Powell's jurisdiction, responsibility, and ultimately his control. And recently, Powell's message to Congress was clear. The Fed has limited tools to address housing supply.
There's a longer run shortage of housing in the United States, which there's nothing that the Fed can do about.
When pressed on housing affordability, Powell acknowledged the Fed's constraints in solving the supply side issue. And let's call a spade here. That's what it is, a supply side issue. And even as politicians are calling for Jerome Powell to lower interest rates, the reality is lowering interest rates would actually create more of a problem. The fact is, the whole housing issue, the whole housing affordability crisis, it's actually the responsibility of all the other branches of government, excluding, of course, the courts. So if you're waiting for rate cuts to save the housing market, this video is going to change everything you think you know. Because what's happening right now is the beginning of an all-out housing policy war. And to understand it, we need to go back, way back. The Federal Reserve has kept interest rates at their highest level in over 2 decades. And that's causing homebuyers to be frozen. Builders are anxious, and sellers, well, most won't even budge because they're locked into 3% mortgage rates that are from the pandemic era. And home prices just hit an all-time high, even as sales are collapsing. But how is it that this is even possible? It defies basic economics. When demand falls, prices should too. But not in housing, not anymore. Here's what's really happening. The market is so broken that normal economic rules no longer apply. We're witnessing something unprecedented in American economic history, a complete disconnect between supply, demand, and price. But now Powell is shifting the blame. And Trump's housing chief just said Powell should resign immediately, claiming it would make the economy boom. In his June Senate testimony, Powell was asked whether high interest rates are hurting housing. His response acknowledged the complexity. Yes, rates affect housing, but supply constraints are the deeper issue. Multiple lawmakers pressed Powell on housing affordability and the Fed's role in addressing this crisis. When pressed, Powell indicated that long-term housing solutions lie beyond monetary policy. And he's right. According to Powell's testimony, the real issue is structural. America hasn't built enough homes for over a decade.
That there's not enough supply to meet demand, but at the same time, it also means there's more demand than there is supply.
And monetary policy has limited tools to fix supply shortages. And Powell emphasized the Fed's constraints in addressing housing supply issues. But here's what makes this moment so explosive. Powell is essentially admitting that the Federal Reserve, the most powerful economic institution in America, is powerless to fix the country's biggest economic crisis. Which raises the question, if the Fed can't fix housing, who can? And more importantly, how did we get here? To understand today's housing crisis, we need to go back to 1916, because what happened over a century ago is still strangling American cities today. Berkeley, California passed the first single-family zoning law in America. The idea? It was simple. Keep factories away from homes. And that sounds reasonable, right? But here's what they don't tell you in history class. These laws weren't about factories. They were about people. Specifically keeping certain types of people out of certain neighborhoods. In 1917, the Supreme Court banned race-based zoning. Cities couldn't legally say whites only anymore, which they should have never been able to do in the first place. So what did they do? The cities, they got creative. In 1926, the Supreme Court upheld single-family zoning in Euclid versus Ambler. The court said apartments were, and I'm quoting here, mere parasites, not my words, that would blight neighborhoods. Parasites, that's what they called apartments. But it gets worse. The courts argued that apartments would destroy property values and ruin the character of neighborhoods. Is this starting to sound familiar? That's the exact same language used today to block new housing. After World War II, single-family zoning exploded across America. By the 1970s, it got even more restrictive. But here's the part they really don't want you to know. While zoning laws didn't explicitly mention race, they did the same job. Wealthy white neighborhoods got single-family protections. Minority communities, they got industrial zoning and apartments. It was segregation, but by another name. And it worked almost perfectly. depending on who you were. A 2021 study showed that cities that adopted zoning before 1930 showed rates of racial segregation 25% higher than cities that adopted zoning later. The connection is undeniable. Zoning wasn't just about land use, it was about social control. Today, according to multiple analysis, approximately 75% of residential land in American cities is zoned exclusively for single-family homes. 3/4. That means on most residential land in America, it's literally illegal to build anything except a single-family house. No duplexes, no townhomes, no apartments, no condos, no co-housing, no accessory dwelling units, just single-family homes. And that brings us back to Powell, because he understands something most politicians don't. You can't monetary policy your way out of a zoning problem. So let's talk about what Powell didn't outright say. But before we get into that, let me tell you about our sponsor for this video, Surfshark. If you're watching this, you likely make the odd investment trade online, and at the very least, you almost definitely have online banking. But you probably haven't thought about how important it is to protect your account information, especially when you're using public Wi-Fi. Surfshark offers privacy and security solutions to safeguard your data and privacy online. It encrypts your internet traffic and masks your IP, your internet protocol address. It can help you protect yourself when using public Wi-Fi in coffee shops, conference rooms, airports, and especially in hotels. Once your device connects to the internet, all your information is encrypted. And not only does it protect you, but you can also watch your favorite streaming services when you're in a different country. Or use it like I do to see how news stories are being portrayed in other countries. Because quite often, the news stories that we get here at home are significantly different in other countries, even though they're covering the exact same story. And I can't emphasize how important this is, both from a security perspective and from the perspective of knowing what's really going on in the world. And one of the best things about Surfshark is it can be used on multiple devices, and it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So you can take your time to try out the service and experience the whole Surfshark VPN potential. If you use public Wi-Fi and you aren't protecting your email, your internet browsing, and your banking information, you're taking a massive risk. And if you want to try it out, don't forget about that money-back guarantee. Go to surfshark.com/Nolan or use code Nolan at checkout to get an extra 4 months of Surfshark VPN. Okay, so back to what Powell didn't outright say. Lowering rates now could actually make things worse. This is the dirty secret nobody wants to admit. The Fed is trapped by its own success during the pandemic. Why? Because millions of homeowners are locked in. Think about it. If you have a 2.75% mortgage rate from 2021, why would you ever sell? Even if rates drop from 7% to 6%, you're still doubling your interest payments. I mean, let's take, for example, somebody who bought a home in Denver in 2020 and got an interest rate of 2.9%. Yeah, they'd probably love a bigger house for their growing family, but at today's rates, they're trapped. And they aren't alone. There are millions of homeowners in exactly the same position. Their current payment on a $400,000 house, it's about $1,650 per month. The same house today at 7%, it's over $2,650 per month. That's $1,000 more every single month. And that's over 30 years. That's an extra $360,000 over the life of the loan, just in interest. So if rates drop, more buyers rush in. But sellers, even at 6%, they're still going to stay put, because their current mortgage rate and their current situation is still going to be better. So if rates went down, demand would obviously go up, but supply, it's probably not going to move either. And the prices, they're going to rise even faster. It's a trap, and Powell knows it. This creates what economists call a locked market, where normal price signals stop working. In a healthy market, rising prices bring more supply. Sellers see high prices and decide to sell. But when you have a 3% mortgage and today's rates are 7%, high prices don't matter. You're not moving. The National Association of Realtors estimates that 95% of current homeowners have mortgage rates below 6%. That means the vast majority of potential sellers are financially incentivized not to sell. This is why he keeps saying rates might stay higher for longer. He's not just fighting inflation anymore. He's trying to avoid making the housing crisis even worse. Because here's the paradox. Lower rates would bring more buyers, but they wouldn't bring more sellers. That would create even more upward pressure on prices. And even if we wanted to build our way out of this crisis, we can't. Why? Because we don't have the workers. The construction industry needs an estimated 439,000 new workers this year alone. 439,000. That's more than the population of Oakland, California. Some industry estimates suggest the need could reach 723,000 annually. But here's the thing, we're not just short on workers, we're short on the right kind of workers. And the question is, where did all the workers go? Well, during the 2008 recession, construction lost 30% of its workforce. Nearly 1/3 gone, pretty much overnight. And many never came back. They retrained for other industries. They started small businesses. They retired early. And the ones who stayed, they're getting older. Today, more than 1 in 5 construction workers are over the age of 55. They're retiring at a rate of about 75,000 per year. And young people? They're not replacing them. People don't want their babies to grow up to be construction workers, says Brian Turmel from the Associated General Contractors. For decades, we've pushed everyone towards four-year colleges. The trades, they've pretty much been forgotten. We told an entire generation that success meant a college degree and a desk job. Meanwhile, the average college graduate leaves with $37,000 in debt. A skilled electrician or plumber, they start earning immediately. No debt, and they're making $70,000 to $80,000 within a few years. Master electricians in most cities, they're pulling in $100,000 to $120,000. But the stigma remains. Parents still don't want their kids working with their hands, even though construction workers often out-earn college graduates by their 30s. But wait, it gets even worse. Because 23% of construction workers are immigrants. About half of them are undocumented. So Trump's mass deportation plans? They could remove hundreds of thousands of construction workers. The Urban Institute just warned mass deportation would reduce the construction labor force, exacerbating the housing shortage. Think about that. We're already short workers, and we might deport the ones we have. In states like Texas, California, and Florida, where most new construction happens, immigrants make up 35 to 45% of the construction workforce. Remove them, and you don't just have a worker shortage, you have a complete industry collapse. The University of Denver found that labor shortages cost builders $10.8 billion annually. That shortage meant 19,000 fewer homes built last year alone. Each project now takes an extra 2 months to complete. Smaller builders, even worse, 2.4 extra months. Every delay means higher costs. Higher costs mean higher prices. And here's the cruel irony. The longer projects take, the more expensive housing gets. The more expensive housing gets, the fewer people can afford to buy the homes these workers are building. It's a vicious cycle. But workers aren't the only shortage. Let me tell you about the supply chain crisis nobody talks about anymore. Remember 2021, lumber prices went absolutely insane. A 2x4 that cost $3 before the pandemic hit a peak of $17. That's a 500% increase. Imagine if gas went from $3 to $15 per gallon overnight. Today, lumber has come down, but it's still 40% higher than pre-pandemic levels. And it's not just lumber. Appliances, windows, roofing materials, concrete, steel, copper wiring, everything costs more and takes longer to get. Why? Because our supply chains are more fragile than we thought. During COVID, suppliers shut down, workers got sick, ports backed up, container ships sat offshore for weeks, factories in China closed for months. And when demand roared back, the system couldn't handle it. We went from 50% capacity to 150% demand overnight. There was no way to catch up. But here's what's really disturbing. We never fully recovered. Supply chains are still fragile. Lead times are still longer. Costs are still elevated. Today, materials account for 65% of a home's construction costs. Labor is 25%, land and other costs make up the rest. When materials spike 40%, that's a $100,000 increase on a typical new home. No wonder builders are struggling. And here's the kicker. When materials get expensive, builders don't build smaller, cheaper homes. They build bigger, more expensive homes to maintain their profit margins. A builder used to make money on a $200,000 starter home. Now, they need to build $400,000 homes to make the same profit. And small builders, the ones who used to build affordable homes, many went out of business. During the pandemic, America lost 15,000 small home building companies. The survivors, they're building bigger, more expensive homes to maintain margins. That's another reason why we're not getting affordable housing. The American housing market is increasingly dominated by larger builders focused on luxury homes, because that's the only way to make money in this broken system. And this crisis isn't just about housing. It's reshaping American society in ways most people don't realize. Teachers, firefighters, nurses, essential workers are being priced out of the communities they serve. In California, school districts are struggling to hire teachers because educators can't afford to live anywhere near their schools. Some districts are now building teacher housing. Let that sink in. We're so short on housing that schools are becoming real estate developers. Police departments in expensive cities can't recruit officers. Who wants to be a cop in San Francisco if you can't afford to live within 50 miles of the city? And it's not just individuals, it's businesses too. Companies are struggling to attract workers to expensive cities. When your employees can't afford housing, you can't build a workforce. That's why some tech companies are now offering housing subsidies. Not health insurance, not retirement benefits, housing subsidies. Amazon, Google, Facebook, they're all in the real estate business now because their employees literally have nowhere to live. This is economically insane. We're forcing some of the world's most innovative companies to become landlords because we can't build enough housing. And it's not just expensive coastal cities anymore. Austin, Nashville, Denver, Phoenix, cities that used to be affordable are now pricing out middle-class families. The crisis is spreading like a slow-motion disaster rolling across the country. Young adults are living with parents longer. Families are cramming into smaller spaces. People are moving further from their jobs, creating massive commutes and environmental damage. The American economy is literally reorganizing itself around our failure to build housing. So the question is, what is Powell really saying here? He's shifting responsibility, subtly but definitively, onto local and federal housing policy. Zoning laws, construction bottlenecks, labor shortages. Powell is putting pressure on cities and Congress, not just markets. During his testimony, Powell acknowledged significant housing challenges while emphasizing the limits of monetary policy. Translation: stop looking at the Fed for housing solutions. Start looking at your city council and state legislature. And here's the real kicker. The housing shortage isn't just bad, it's catastrophic. Multiple organizations have quantified America's housing deficit, and while their methodologies differ, the scale is staggering. Realtor.com estimates we're short 7.2 million homes. The National Low Income Housing Coalition reports 7.1 million missing affordable rentals. Zillow's analysis suggests 4.5 million. Brookings Institution puts it at 4.9 million homes short. Even the most conservative estimate, 4.5 million, represents a crisis larger than the entire housing stock of Texas. From 2001 to 2020, America built 18% fewer homes per year than the historical average from 1968 to 2000. We've been systemically underbuilding for 2 decades. Despite varying methodologies, every major housing analysis reaches the exact same conclusion. America faces a severe housing deficit measured in millions of homes. But Powell's message goes deeper than just admitting the Fed's limits. He's essentially telling Congress, you created this mess, you fix it. Because the Fed has actually done its job. They've kept the economy stable through multiple crises. The 2008 financial crisis, the pandemic, multiple recessions. But housing, that's a regulatory and policy failure. And that means this isn't just a mortgage rate story anymore. It's a policy war. But here's where it gets political. President Trump has publicly criticized Powell for keeping rates too high. He's called him a numbskull and blamed him for damaging the housing market. Trump understands something crucial. Housing wins elections, and if people can't afford homes, they blame whoever's in charge. And FHFA head Bill Pulte, I don't know how to say that, but he's gone nuclear. On July 11th, Pulte released an official statement saying he's encouraged by reports that Jerome Powell is considering resigning. I think this will be the right decision for America, and the economy will boom. No, there's no confirmation Powell is actually considering this. But Pulte clearly wants him gone. Pulte has accused Powell of deceptive Senate testimony and called for immediate congressional investigations. A House Republican, Anna Paulina Luna, just referred Powell to the Department of Justice for perjury. The White House Budget Director, Russell Vought, accused him of violating the law and said Trump is extremely troubled by Powell's management. And all of this centers on a $2.5 billion Fed headquarters renovation that's become a political lightning rod. Claims of VIP private dining rooms and premium marble finishes, stuff that actually sounds like it's right out of Trump's playbook. Well, Powell denies it all. He says there's no new marble, no special elevators, but the damage is done. The pressure campaign is unprecedented. And it's all about housing because everyone knows housing wins elections. In 2024, housing affordability was the number 2 issue for voters under 35. Only the economy ranked higher. And for many young voters, housing is the economy. When you're spending 50% of your income on rent, everything else becomes secondary. But even if Powell resigned tomorrow, it wouldn't fix the real problem. Remember those zoning laws from 1916? They're still here. And they're strangling us. In Washington, D.C., 36% of residential land is single-family only. In Seattle, it's even worse. Some suburbs, literally, nearly 100%. Let me paint you a picture of how absurd this has become. In Palo Alto, California, the heart of Silicon Valley, you can't build an apartment building on most residential land. This is a place where software engineers making $200,000 per year literally live in their cars because it's illegal to build housing they can afford, and they make $200,000 a year. Economists call it the missing middle. Duplexes, townhomes, small apartment buildings, the housing that used to exist between single-family homes and high-rises. It's missing because we made it illegal. Minneapolis ended single-family zoning in 2019. Oregon, California, Maine, they've all passed reforms. But here's the problem. Even where zoning changed, construction hasn't exploded. Why? Because developers aren't rushing to build. It turns out changing zoning is just step one. You still have minimum lot sizes that make small buildings impossible, height restrictions that limit density, parking requirements that eat up land, design reviews that take months or years, environmental reviews for every small project, permitting delays that can stretch for years, and lawsuits. So many lawsuits. In California, environmental groups routinely sue to block housing projects. Not because they're actually bad for the environment, but because environmental law is the only tool they have to stop development. Homeowners fighting to preserve neighborhood character, translation, keep everyone else out, which is also known as NIMBY, not in my backyard, is alive and well, even in progressive cities that claim to support affordable housing. Berkeley, California, the most liberal city in America, has spent decades blocking new housing. The result? A city where progressive politics meets exclusionary economics. They vote for affordable housing in theory, then they block it in practice. So let me put this all into perspective for you. Home prices have hit an all-time high, even as sales are down, even as the market has fizzled, according to NPR. How is that even possible? Because the shortage is so severe that even reduced demand can't bring prices down. Think about that. We have so few homes that prices keep rising even when fewer people are buying. This breaks every rule of Economics 101. In 2022, we built 1.4 million homes, but we added 1.8 million new households. We're going backwards. We're not even keeping up with new demand, let alone fixing the decade-long shortage. From 1968 to 2000, we built 1.5 million homes per year. From 2001 to 2020, just 1.23 million. That's 5.5 million missing homes, just from building less. And in population growth, we're short at least 7 million homes. And it's all because when supply is this constrained, the normal rules don't apply. Other countries figured this out decades ago. Japan built 1 million homes per year with half our population. South Korea builds 500,000 homes annually. Germany, 300,000 new units every year. They allow dense, mixed-use development near transit. We don't. They streamline permitting. We don't. They train construction workers. We don't. The solutions exist. We're just not implementing them. So Jerome Powell's June testimony made one thing clear. Monetary policy alone can't fix the housing crisis. The Fed tools, interest rates and monetary policy have limits when it comes to housing supply. It's not about mortgage rates anymore. It's about the way America builds, or in this case, how it doesn't build. As housing economists say, the solution to housing is housing. Simple as that. We need zoning reform to allow more housing types, streamlined permitting processes that take months, not years, construction worker training programs, immigration reform to maintain labor supply, reduced regulations, and federal coordination between agencies. Some places are getting it right. Houston has no zoning and builds more housing per capita than anywhere else. Result? It's one of the most affordable major cities in America. Austin streamlined permitting and cut approval times in half. Minneapolis saw new housing construction increase 40% after zoning reform. These aren't theories, they're proven solutions. So if you're watching the Fed and you really do believe that it's Jerome Powell's fault you can't afford a home, you need to zoom out. Watch your city council, watch zoning hearings, watch building permits, because that's where the real battle for housing affordability will be fought. And if Trump officials succeed in pushing Powell out, it won't change the fundamental problem. We need millions more homes, period. Whoever replaces Powell will face the same constraints. The same political pressure, the same impossible expectations, because the housing crisis isn't a monetary policy problem. It's an American policy problem. The next Fed chair will discover what Powell already knows, and probably already knows it. You can't print your way out of a zoning crisis. Look, this isn't just about economics. It's about the American dream. Can your kids afford to live in the town where they grew up? Can teachers afford to live where they teach? Can anyone who isn't already wealthy build a life in America's cities? These are the questions that matter. The housing crisis is redefining what it means to be middle class in America. And until we fix the problem, and that's that we don't build enough homes, No amount of monetary policy is going to save us. Oh, and if you want to know just how bad this really is, well, make sure you subscribe and check out this video right here that explains why this definitely won't end well.